I always knew my family would pick her. I just never thought they'd do it hours before my own birthday dinner, the one I'd actually planned for myself. The private room I chose because I wanted one night where the attention wasn't automatically pulled toward someone else's crisis. The deposit I scraped together even though money was tight. The 8 people I invited, not because they were family, but because they actually saw me. But that's exactly what happened. And that night, is something small and important inside me finally snapped. 9 years later, I'm standing on my own porch, boots covered in the kind of dust that belongs to me, looking out at land that carries my blood in every fence post and my sweat in every board of the barn. They still don't understand what they lost when they chose her over me again and again. But I do. And I stopped explaining it a long time ago. My name is Harper Langford. I'm 34 now. This is the story of how I stopped being the strong one and became the woman nobody could take anything from again. I grew up in Indianapolis, the older of 2 daughters in a house where crisis always had priority seating. My sister Brooke was 2 years younger and had this uncanny ability to turn ordinary days into emergencies that required every adult within driving distance to rearrange their entire lives around her. It wasn't that she was calculating or cruel in some obvious way. She was just fragile. Or at least that's what everyone decided she was, and she learned to lean into it. When I was 15 and finally made the varsity soccer team after years of extra practices, my parents left my first game at halftime. Brooke had called them in tears because some boy she liked had ghosted her after 2 dates. They didn't even stay to see if I played. When I graduated high school with honors and a small scholarship, they arrived 20 minutes late to the ceremony because Brooke had locked herself in the bathroom having a meltdown over a bad haircut she got the day before. When I moved into my first apartment at 22, excited and terrified in equal measure, they helped me carry 3 boxes up the stairs and then left early because Brooke needed them to co-sign for a car she had no business buying. I became the reliable one. The one who didn't need therapy, didn't create scenes, didn't require constant reassurance. My mom had a whole gentle way of saying it, "You're the strong one, Harper. You understand." What she really meant, and what I only understood much later, was that I was the one they didn't have to worry about. The one they didn't have to show up for. Being strong wasn't a compliment. It was a sentence. The only place that ever felt like mine was the boarding barn where I kept my horse. I'd go early in the mornings before work, mark stalls in the cold, brush her until my arms ached, and ride until my head finally went quiet. That horse knew more about the version of me I couldn't show anyone else than my own mother ever did. Then came my 25th birthday. I had been saving for months. Found a restaurant with a small private room in the back. Put down a deposit I really couldn't afford to lose. Invited 8 people who actually liked me for who I was, 2 girls from the barn, a coworker who made me laugh, people who didn't see me as Brooke's older sister. I bought a forest green dress on sale and told myself that this time, just once, I was allowed to take up space without apologizing for it. The call came in the late afternoon. My mom didn't open with "Happy birthday." She opened with an explanation. Brooke had gotten engaged the night before. She wanted to do a family dinner tonight. She needed everyone there. And because I was the strong one, I would understand. I stood in my kitchen in that dress I had bought for myself and felt something inside me go very still. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just done. I said okay. I called the restaurant and cancelled. They kept the deposit, of course. I thanked them like nothing was wrong. Then I took the dress off, folded it carefully, put on jeans, packed a duffel bag with whatever I could grab, and drove east with no destination except away from the life that had never really felt like it belonged to me. 3 hours into the drive, somewhere past the city lights and into the dark, I remembered something my dad had mentioned once in passing, that his father Roy had some land out east. 85 acres. An old man getting older. Nobody really working it anymore. I had Roy's number saved from a Christmas card I'd never sent. I pulled into a gas station late at night and called him. He answered on the third ring. I told him, a voice shaking more than I wanted it to, that I needed somewhere to go. Not the whole story, just enough. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he simply said, "You know where I am," and hung up. No questions. No guilt. No conditions. Just a place on the map and a man who picked up the phone when his granddaughter called in the middle of the night. I drove the rest of the way in the dark. Roy Langford was 72 when I pulled up to his property late that night. He was sitting on the front porch in an old wooden chair, a mug in his hands, like he'd been waiting. The land looked tired in the headlights, sagging fence lines, a barn that still had a roof but not much else going for it, a farmhouse that needed paint the way old things eventually do. Not falling apart. Just waiting for someone to care enough to fix it. He stood when I got out of the car. Tall, thin, the kind of posture that only comes from decades of working outside. He looked at me for a long second under the porch light, this granddaughter he barely knew from holidays and occasional phone calls, and didn't say anything sentimental. He just turned and walked inside. I followed. In the morning he handed me a pair of cracked leather gloves that had belonged to my dad. "They'll fit when you've earned them," he said. They were 2 sizes too big. I put them on anyway. By noon my hands were bleeding through the leather. Barbed wire doesn't care how soft your palms are. That first year on the property was brutal in the best possible way. I learned how to stretch fence properly so it actually stayed tight instead of sagging after the first hard rain. I learned how to read a horse's ears and the way they shifted their weight before they decided to kick. I learned how to tell good hay from hay that would mold in the loft. Roy didn't lecture or explain everything in long speeches. He walked beside me and let the land teach me when I got something wrong. When I wired a section with the wrong tension and it sagged within a week, he just pointed at it and said, "Do it again." When I got something right, he said nothing at all. That silence became the highest form of approval I had ever received in my life. I slept in the guest room for the first 4 months. Then I insulated and moved into the small apartment above the barn because I wanted to earn my own space on the property instead of just occupying his. Roy thought it was mildly eccentric but didn't argue. My mom called twice in those first few months. Both calls were about Brooke, one about a breakup that had ended badly, one about a job she had dramatically quit. At the very end of the second call, almost like an afterthought, she mentioned that Roy had emailed asking if I was alright and saying the drive was long if I ever wanted to visit. I told her I was fine. He never wrote again. Brooke texted me once, 8 months in. "Just you good?" I didn't answer. By the end of that first year the east fence was solid. We had 8 horses and real board income for the first time in years. By the second year we had 19. I hired Dylan Thompson, 43, quiet, had worked on ranches in 3 different states. He came recommended by Dr. Rachel Ellis, our vet, who slowly became something close to a real friend out there. Roy watched all of it with this quiet, satisfied look, like he had been waiting a long time for someone to prove the land still had life left in it. Then one day in the 3rd year my cousin Riley sent me a screenshot with no message attached. It was from a family group chat I wasn't part of. My mom had written that when Roy passed, the land would finally be worth real money now that someone had fixed it up. They could split it 3 ways and sell. I could keep a horse or 2 if I was reasonable about it. Brooke had sent a heart emoji. My dad had replied with 2 words, "Sounds fair." I read those 2 words until they stopped making sense. Sounds fair. My father, who had driven past this property exactly once in 3 years, thought selling the land I had rebuilt with my own hands and my own blood was fair. I walked the screenshot over to the farmhouse. Roy read it the way he read everything important, slowly, all the way through, without rushing. When he finished, he set the phone down on the table and looked out the window at the south pasture where 2 new mares were grazing along the fence I had fixed with my own hands. "One day this place should be yours," he said quietly. "You're the only one who ever bled for it." I told him he was being dramatic. That he would be around for a long time yet. I should have asked what he meant. I didn't. As the years went on, Roy's health began to change. The doctor had been gentle but clear that we needed to prepare. Roy still came to the barn every morning for as long as he could, still knew every horse's name and story, but the mornings grew shorter. I started handling more and more of the day-to-day work, and he started making sure I knew the books, the contacts, everything that kept the place running. During that time my mom drove out for the first time in years. She walked the property with Roy while I stayed busy in the barn because I already knew the conversation wasn't meant to include me. Later she found me at the fence and asked about income, about the new arena we had built, about what the place was generating now. Every question sounded casual. None of them were. That evening she cornered Roy at the kitchen table and started asking about his will, his paperwork, whether everything was in order and if he was doing right by all his grandchildren. She put a particular little emphasis on the word grandchildren. Roy answered every single question the same way. "Ask Harper." 4 times. She left the next morning without saying goodbye to me. When Roy passed, it wasn't a surprise, but it still felt like the ground shifting underneath me. He had asked to be buried on the south hill where you could see both pastures from the top. We did it exactly the way he wanted, simple, with the people who had actually been part of his life there. Neighbors. Boarders. Dr. Ellis. Dylan. Cole Patterson, the contractor who had helped build the arena. And Elias Thornton, Roy's attorney for more than 20 years. My family came. My mom in her good charcoal coat, already mentally at the meeting that comes after funerals. Brooke in something funeral appropriate but somehow still managing to make it about her. My dad didn't show up. After the graveside service, my mom found me at the coffee urn. "We should sit down soon about the land," she said. "We'll settle everything fairly, as a family." I looked at her and said, "You're right. Come out whenever you want. Bring whoever you need." She smiled like she had won something. I spent the next week making phone calls. I asked Elias to be there as Roy's friend, not as the estate lawyer. I asked Dylan to stay close. I reached out to 7 neighboring families and 3 of our regular boarders, people who had watched what this place had become over the years. I told them it was a memorial lunch for Roy. It genuinely was. I cooked. Dylan strung lights across the south porch. It looked like exactly what it was supposed to be, people who actually cared about Roy coming together to remember him. My mom arrived in the afternoon with Vanessa Holt, a realtor who specialized in agricultural properties, and Brooke trailing behind her, already scanning the crowd for sympathy. My dad still wasn't there. After about 10 minutes, my mom clinked a fork against a glass like she was hosting an event. "Our family has decided to honor Roy by selling this ranch to good people who will continue his legacy," she announced with that warm, benevolent voice people use when they think they are being generous. "Vanessa here will be handling the process. And please don't worry about Harper. She'll be well taken care of." I set my coffee down. "Actually, Mom," I said, "the ranch isn't yours to sell." She laughed the social laugh. "Honey, we can handle the details privately. We can handle them right now." Elias stepped forward from the back of the crowd. He opened a folder and held up one page, a county seal, a red stamp, Roy's signature next to mine, notary, filed years earlier. Roy Langford transferred full ownership of this property to Harper Langford years ago by warranty deed, Elias said, his voice calm and carrying across the porch. The transfer was recorded with the county. It has been her property, free and clear, since the date of recording. There is no estate interest in this land. There is nothing to sell and nothing to split. Vanessa Holt closed her leather folio. The sound was small, but it landed like a door shutting. My mom's face did something I had never seen before. The warm, gracious, benevolent mask fell off all at once. What was left underneath looked small and genuinely shocked. He was confused, she said. He was sick. You manipulated a dying old man into. He drove to the county office himself, the liar said evenly. Full health. Sound mind. I documented his capacity at the time. He was sharper than most men half his age. My mom tried one more angle. She isolated him out here. She kept him away from his family. Roy Langford made his own choices about his property and his relationships for 75 years, Elias said. This transfer was one of them. The entire porch went completely still. I looked at my mom and thought about every birthday, every holiday, every time I had been told I was strong enough to be left out of things that mattered. You taught me I was the strong one, I said quietly, so you'd never have to be soft. Grandpa showed up for me on paper. Permanently. I picked up my coffee. The gate's this way. I walked them out myself, past the barn with the new name above the door, past the full stalls, past the arena where the training program already had a wait list. Vanessa gave me a small, apologetic nod as she drove away. My mom's sedan followed. Brooke was already on her phone in the back seat. My mom didn't look at me when they passed. I slid the bolt on the gate home. In the time since then, the place has grown in ways I didn't let myself fully imagine back when I first showed up with a duffel bag and bleeding hands. The training program now has a 6-month wait list. Cole finished the second arena and it's better than the first. We brought on 2 more staff members Dr. Ellis recommended. The land pays for itself and then some. My mom has emailed a few times. The emails are careful, full of words like fair and moving forward as a family. I haven't answered any of them. My dad called once. We talked for a while. He said he hadn't really understood what I had built out here. I told him I knew. He said he hoped we could find a way forward. I said maybe. That was enough. Brooke hasn't contacted me. Riley came out with her husband and kids one summer. We rode in the mornings and ate on the porch in the evenings. It felt like family in a way I hadn't felt in a very long time. Roy's gloves still hung by the barn door. They fit now. I put them on when the work needs them. They still smell like cracked leather and years of use. Every single time I slide my hands into them, I hear his voice, "They'll fit when you've earned them." I earned them. The bolt on that gate is mine. And for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for anyone to choose me. I chose myself. I built the proof with my own 2 hands, and nobody, not my mother, not my sister, not the version of me that used to stay quiet and small, can take it back. If you've ever been the strong one in your family, you already know how this story feels in your bones. The difference is, I stopped waiting for them to notice I was carrying everything. I just picked up the gloves and kept walking. The land is still here. The horses are still here. And I'm still here, stronger than they ever wanted me to be, and finally free. That's the part they never saw coming.